Hello guys, welcome back. My name's Nathan, and today I'm predicting when the top NHL RFAs will sign. Now, the current RFA landscape right now in the NHL is really a disaster right now. You have so many fantastic, talented players that have yet to be signed right now. But how are the contract negotiations looking like? What is the latest rumors on these players? And when do I predict all of these RFAs to eventually sign? Watch till the end to find out. Now, right now, I am in my hotel room in Utah. You got the beautiful mountains out the window, but I'm not going to stop making videos. Going to keep consistent daily stuff out there. And a thing I've been wanting to talk about for a while is the current RFA landscape. Again, as I said, a landscape that right now is a complete disaster. Just like the mountains that are above my window, they're pretty rocky, especially for a lot of the RFAs that have still yet to be signed. Now, a big example of those rocky negotiations has come from Mitch Marner, a guy that pretty much has set the market whether he likes it or not, and a guy that a lot of wingers, and especially RFA wingers, are waiting to eventually get signed to settle on their current value. And Mitch Marner, again, I think is one of the best RFAs right now available, if not the best RFA. He has so much talent, and for the Toronto Maple Leafs is such a valuable player. But there's a lot of buts when it comes to that situation. Right now, it's kind of up in the air when he actually will end up signing. He could sign tomorrow. He could sign on December 1st. Right now, it's pretty much all over the place. Whether he likes it or not, Mitch Marner right now is deciding the winger market. You have other guys like Mikko, Rantanen, and Patrik Laine who are waiting on that term, waiting on the AV to really start negotiations with their respective teams. And if Mitch Marner goes, maybe goes unsigned until the season or even into the season start, I think we can see a lot of those RFAs potentially being unsigned there, and a lot of guys going into the season that'll have the same situation like a guy like William Nylander last year. And we have so many fantastic RFA wingers. Mitch Marner leading the class. Again, there is a bar to set, and Mitch Marner knows that. He's setting that bar when it comes to money. And while I definitely think a lot of people may be expecting negotiations to go into the NHL season, to me when it comes to when Mitch Marner will sign, I think it'll be around that preseason mark. In September, in that mid to late September mark, I think that's when we'll see Mitch Marner being signed. And again, you got so many other guys that are leading his path. Those guys might go into the season, even if that ends up happening. But I think in the preseason, both Mitch Marner and Kyle Dubas will really want to get it done, even more than they have in the past couple of months. At that point, I think it'll be urgent. And Mitch Marner obviously knows what happened to William Nylander this past season. It's not the route that I think he wants to end up taking. So I think in the end, he'll actually end up signing in preseason. Whether it's at the start, whether it's at the end, I think he'll be signed before the NHL season starts. Now, moving on to a player that's had some juicy info come about him in the past couple of days. Moving on to Patrik Laine and his somewhat baffling contract negotiations. Now, Laine recently had an interview with Chris Johnson of Sportsnet saying that his future with the Winnipeg Jets is very uncertain, and that obviously paints a dark cloud to how those negotiations are going right now. But I still think when it comes to Patrik Laine, I think he'll end up signing with the Winnipeg Jets, though if he ends up getting traded, I'm all for it. I'll grab my popcorn, man. I already bring some in my vacation. Patrik Laine in that same interview also said that he's prepared for anything, which, again, I think is kind of the same situation, because with that whole situation, you could get offer sheeted, you could see him being traded, and of course you could see him in the end actually being signed by the Winnipeg Jets. So that whole situation, especially when it comes to Patrik Laine in a somewhat slump year, it kind of creates an interesting topic, and Patrik Laine you could definitely see going into the season and being unsigned, especially with a guy like Mitch Marner being signed in preseason. I'm not sure Patrik Laine will be having enough time to get done before that season starts. Let's say Mitch Marner gets signed at the mid part of the preseason, and again, there hasn't been too much chalk between Patrik Laine and the Winnipeg Jets. At that point, to get an average annual value and a term at that point, I think it'll take a little bit more than that to get it done, and I think it actually will go into the NHL season. And with Mitch Marner in my hypothetical world signing in the preseason, I think Patrik Laine would again go into the NHL season still unsigned. Now, for how long I think is the big question there, because I think he will go into the NHL season unsigned, but maybe not for too long. I think it'll be around that mid-October mark when he does end up signing for the Winnipeg Jets, and I don't think it'll take that long. After that, obviously Mitch Marner signing, I think they'll have to negotiate term, money. They haven't really talked too much, the Winnipeg Jets and the Patrik Laine camps. So I think it's going to take a little while to get that contract done, but not as long as some people might expect. I don't think it'll run until November, but in this hypothetical world, I think it'll be mid-October when he ends up signing. Moving on to the first center of the RFA class, and I think the best center of the RFA class, bar none, we have Brayden Point in his somewhat straightforward contract negotiations. Now, when it comes to Brayden Point, well, he's not a winger. I think he's kind of in the same boat as Patrik Laine, where he was kind of waiting for Mitch Marner to actually sign a deal. But at this point, I think Brayden Point wants to stay on Tampa, be ready for training camp, and of course the preseason. I think he was waiting for Mitch Marner to get that deal done, but I think at a point, Brayden Point will just call it a day and just sign a deal. Now, to me, when it comes to Brayden Point, I think he'll want to be on Tampa on day one. I think it'll be before training camp starts. I think that's when we'll see him actually sign. He could go maybe till preseason, but at that point, when it comes to Brayden Point, I think it'll just be a little bit too far for his liking. And we've seen so many quotes about Brayden Point wanting to stay in Tampa Bay. He declined the Montreal Canadiens offer sheet, so it's obvious he wants to be a Tampa Bay Lightning, which as a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, I always love to see Brayden Point on my team. So when it comes to him, I don't think there's any real threat of him leaving the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think it's all just about term, about money. They're discussing a bridge deal too, which it could also factor into it. And Brayden Point's negotiations are never really straightforward either. While I did say they were straightforward earlier, when it comes to the AAV, he could take a bridge deal, he could take a longer term deal. I think for the Tampa Bay Lightning and Brayden Point too, a bridge deal might be in order. I think when it comes to both Tampa and Brayden Point, I don't think they'll want to take this past training camp. I think at the very latest, it'll be in the preseason, but nothing longer. I think Brayden Point wants to be at training camp, wants to be preseason, and of course, wants to be on the Tampa Bay Lightning on opening night. Moving on to an RFA situation that's a little bit more simple compared to the other ones, we have Mikko Rantanen and the Colorado Avalanche. And you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan of Mikko Rantanen, but he'll get paid like a superstar whether I like it or not. And these negotiations have been a little more clean compared to others. Now, I still think he's waiting for Mitch Marner to really iron out that deal when it comes to the AAV, but it looks like right now the term is more ironed out than a lot of people really did expect. Now, that was kind of rumored that he might take a bridge deal, he might go long-term with it, but right now it seems more than likely that it'll go long-term with that contract. Probably in the area of 6 to 7, maybe even 8 years on that contract, which is insane for a guy like that. But he's still young, has a lot more to prove too, and obviously with Nathan MacKinnon, has a ton of chemistry. Now when it comes to when he'll actually end up being signed, I think again it'll be around when Mitch Marner ends up getting signed, which is in the preseason, at least when I predict it. So I think Mikko Rantanen will probably take a couple of days after the Marner signing to iron out that deal. I think Colorado already has an idea on what they want to give him. Same thing with Mikko Rantanen, but I think after that Marner deal, that pivotal contract is when Mikko Rantanen does end up getting signed. Now, if maybe Marner goes in the season, I could see Mikko Rantanen before the season maybe getting anxious and getting a deal done, but right now I think that Mitch Marner contract, as of right now, I think is the biggest thing towards getting that contract done. Now, speaking of simple RFA processes, we have the Calgary Flames and the Matthew Tkachuk situation. A situation that Matthew Tkachuk has been pretty open in and straightforward, and right now we have kind of a deadline towards when he might get signed. Now, Matthew Tkachuk is a guy that is loyal to the Calgary Flames. I don't see him going to any other team next season. I just don't see that being a possibility. But with Matthew Tkachuk, he just has so much potential, so much skill, and both Tkachuk and Calgary Flames want to stay together. Now, when it comes to when he'll actually end up getting signed, I think it'll be around the start of preseason. I don't know if it'll be at the start of training camp, though I think they'd like to actually have that happen. I think it'll be at the start of preseason so we can get those preseason games, and I don't think he'll be skipping out on the NHL season. I think he'll play all 82 games if he can actually play. Moving on to another RFA winger in the Pacific Division, we have the Brock Boeser situation with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, Brock Boeser's contract negotiations was, in my opinion, a little bit more simple than people expected, but then it got a little bit more complicated. I think both sides kind of were agreeing, but not agreeing on the AAV, the term, and it was kind of going a little bit apart. We saw some rumors that he was going to take a 3-year deal. It was going to be something in the area of $6 or $7 million, but obviously a contract has not gotten done, and he's still unsigned RFA. At this point, I think Brock Boeser is looking towards that Timo Meier contract as an example. He got, of course, that $6 million contract, which I think is amazing for Timo Meier, but I think Brock Boeser obviously wants more than that. He wants a pay raise, as he should. He's a talented player, but so far Vancouver does not want to pay him what he actually wants. Now, just like all the other RFA wingers I've mentioned, when it comes to Brock Boeser, I think he's kind of waiting on the Mitch Marner situation. I think he knows he's not as good as Mitch Marner, but the comparable can always be used useful negotiations. And I think Brock Boeser is waiting patiently, as he should. The Vancouver Canucks obviously want to keep him on the team. They want to have him as a Vancouver Canuck. I think that will end up happening. I don't think he'll be ending up skipping any NHL games, but I think he will skip a couple preseason games. Be signed in the preseason right around when Mitch Marner is signed too. Moving on to one of the more interesting RFAs in the class, moving on to the Boston Bruins and Charlie McAvoy. Now, McAvoy, if Boston had cap space, I think would already be signed, but the problem, obviously, Boston not having that cap space is making the contract negotiations be kind of put on postpone, and I think that is definitely deserving. Boston doesn't have the greatest cap space, obviously. They're trying to move out pieces. They already got Carlo as an RFA too, who they also have to deal with on that defense, so they kind of have their hands full too. I think they're trying to make moves to get that cap space better, but obviously he will get paid. McAvoy is an excellent defenseman, and whether he likes it or not, will be a Boston Bruin. And I think when it comes to that whole contract negotiations, again, it's getting kind of postponed right now because of those cap issues. But right now, I see it eventually getting done, whether it's in the NHL season or in the preseason. Moving on to the last RFA forward we'll talk about in today's video, we have Kyle Connor and his also interesting situation with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, Kyle Connor recently had an interview with TSN saying that the plan is to be signed before training camp, and I think that is somewhat true. I think when it comes to Winnipeg Jets, I think Kyle Connor will be signed way before Patrik Laine, and I think that will be the case. He wants to play in all 82 games, he wants to be in the preseason at the very least. I think that's kind of the attitude that Kyle Connor has. He wants to stay at the Winnipeg Jets, and the Winnipeg Jets obviously want to have him. Right now, also signing Patrik Laine, they definitely do have their hands full, but they have a decent amount of cap right now. I think Kyle Connor, his whole situation, I think a lot of it has to do on term especially, and Kyle Connor is an excellent player. Winnipeg is kind of in a cap crunch, especially after signing a guy like Patrik Laine, so I think when it comes to Winnipeg, the term right now is just the biggest thing that might differ the two sides. I think the AAV is somewhat agreed upon, but that term obviously will differ it, but right now I think Kyle Connor will at the very least be signed before preseason, if not training camp. Now, just in general, with all the RFAs still somehow being unsigned, I think there's good and also bad in my mind. I think there's two sides of it. You have the bad of these guys potentially not being signed until the NHL season, and we haven't heard a bunch of news on all these guys, really. But the good thing is that there's a lot of drama right now. There's a lot of questions on where these guys will end up signing, if they'll end up signing, and when these guys will end up signing. So for that side of things, I love it, but also the side of them not being signed and being ready for the NHL season, I also hate it. So to me, I'm just kind of going crazy over these RFAs, and at some point, I just want them to sign already. Can we just do it already? Let's freaking go, man. Come on, Mitch Marner. But of course, with this video, my predictions, I need to hear your guys' thoughts down those comments down below. So let me know, what do you think about my predictions? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know. And of course, the big, gigantic question, when do you think these RFAs will end up signing? But if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you should click on this playlist right here to watch all of my NHL predictions. And trust me, it's definitely worth it. But that'll be it for today, guys. If you guys enjoy, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on my predictions, what you agree with, and what you disagree with. I'm in my hotel room just chilling. It's dark time out there. There's police sirens out there. Anyways, it's going pretty good, and I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.